The rain had been falling since dawn, cold and relentless, painting the small town in shades of gray. The streets glistened with puddles, and the smell of wet earth mixed with the faint scent of oil drifting from a worn-down auto repair shop near the corner of Willow Street. Inside, under the dim light of a flickering bulb, a man worked silently, his hands rough, his shirt soaked in sweat and grease. His name was Ethan Cole, a 38-year-old mechanic whose life had once been bright and full of dreams, until tragedy stripped it all away. 3 years ago, a drunk driver had taken everything from him: his wife, his little boy, and his will to hope. Since that night, Ethan had lived in silence, repairing other people's broken cars but never fixing his own shattered heart. He spoke little, smiled never, and spent each night staring at an old photograph on the shelf, his wife holding their son in front of their blue pickup truck, the one he still couldn't bring himself to repair. That day, he had just closed the shop when he heard a faint sound from outside, a small voice, trembling and weak. At first, he thought it was the wind or a stray cat, but when he stepped outside, he saw a tiny figure sitting on the curb, clutching a torn pink backpack. It was a little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, wearing a hospital wristband. Her hair was thin, her face pale, and her clothes drenched from the rain. She looked up at him with the kind of eyes that carried both pain and bravery, eyes too old for a child. And then she said softly, almost whispering through trembling lips, "If you carry me up the stairs, I'll tell you a secret. Speech balloon before we go further, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the magic of helping others when they least expect it, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let's spread stories that remind the world what compassion really looks like." Sparkling heart. Ethan froze. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. The girl was small, fragile, and shivering, her fingers gripping the straps of her backpack as though it held her whole world. "You shouldn't be out here," he said quietly, but she just looked up again, repeating the same words, softer this time, almost pleading. Something about the way she said it, that fragile mix of innocence and desperation, broke through the walls Ethan had built around his heart. Without another word, he stepped forward, knelt down, and lifted her into his arms. She was feather-light. He could feel the tremor in her body as he carried her inside the workshop. The warmth of the old heater brushed against her damp clothes, and she sighed softly, resting her head on his shoulder. For a man who hadn't let anyone close to him for years, the simple weight of a child in his arms brought back memories that burned like fire: his son's laughter, the way his wife used to hand him a towel after long hours at work. He swallowed hard and focused on the present. He set the girl gently on an old couch in the corner. She looked around the workshop curiously, her eyes landing on the dusty picture frame on the shelf. "Is that your family?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan didn't answer. He just turned away, pretending to adjust the heater. Minutes passed before she spoke again. "My name's Lila," she said. "I came from the hospital. I didn't want to stay there anymore. The nurses said I had to, but I wanted to see something real. Something that still works." Ethan frowned. "The hospital? You mean you walked here from there? That's miles away." She nodded weakly. "I wanted to find my dad's shop. He was a mechanic, like you. But he's gone now. Mommy says he fixes cars in heaven." Her small fingers played with a tiny wrench hanging from her backpack zipper. "I thought maybe if I found a place like his, I could feel close to him again." Her words hit Ethan like a hammer to the chest. He stood there silently, watching her gaze at the scattered tools and car parts like they were pieces of her lost world. Something stirred inside him, something he thought was long dead. He went to the kitchen corner, warmed up a bowl of soup, and handed it to her. She smiled faintly, her hands shaking as she took it. "You're kind," she said softly. "You don't talk much, but I think your heart does." That night, Lila fell asleep on the couch, curled up under Ethan's old jacket. He sat beside her for a long time, just watching her breathe. The sound reminded him of the nights he used to watch over his son when he was sick. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel completely alone. The next morning, the rain had stopped. Sunlight peeked through the broken blinds, and Ethan woke up to the sound of quiet humming. Lila was sitting by the window, drawing something on a scrap of cardboard with a pencil stub. When he asked what she was making, she held it up proudly. It was a sketch of a man fixing a car, with a little girl standing beside him, smiling. "This is us," she said. "You fix things, and I help you smile." Ethan couldn't help it. A small, genuine smile formed on his face, the first in years. But before he could say anything, Lila coughed, a deep, painful sound that made his heart sink. He rushed to her side, and she shook her head gently. "It's okay," she whispered. "It just happens sometimes." She reached out a trembling hand and touched his arm. "Can you carry me up the stairs now? I promised to tell you a secret." Ethan hesitated. The only stairs in the building led to a small attic, a place he hadn't been to since the accident. It was where he had stored everything that reminded him of his family, their clothes, his son's toys, and his wife's favorite books. He hadn't had the strength to face it again. But when he saw Lila's pleading eyes, something inside him gave way. He lifted her once more, feeling how fragile she was, bones light as paper, her heartbeat fluttering like a trapped bird. As they climbed each step, memories pressed harder on him. The smell of his wife's perfume, the sound of his son's laughter echoing through the halls. By the time he reached the top, his eyes burned with tears he hadn't shed in years. The attic was dusty, filled with boxes and memories. Lila looked around quietly, then pointed toward an old wooden chest. "That one," she said softly. "What's inside?" Ethan hesitated before opening it. Inside lay small pieces of his past, his wife's scarf, his son's toy car, a crumpled drawing that said, "Daddy's the best mechanic ever." He felt his chest tighten as Lila looked at the items, her eyes wide with wonder. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small metal pendant shaped like an angel. "This was my dad's," she said. "He wore it when he worked. Mommy said he gave it to me to keep me safe. But I think," she paused, her voice trembling, "I think it's supposed to go to someone who fixes more than cars." Ethan looked at her, speechless. "That's my secret," she whispered. "I came here because I wanted to give it to someone who needed to believe again." For a moment, Ethan couldn't breathe. He stared at the tiny pendant glimmering in her frail hands. Then, as tears blurred his vision, he knelt beside her. "Lila," he said quietly, "you don't have to." But before he could finish, she smiled faintly and leaned against him. "Promise me something," she whispered. "When I go back, when I can't walk anymore, promise you'll fix your truck again. Drive it somewhere happy. Maybe, take it where the sky touches the road." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. He didn't know what else to do. He sat there, holding her hand, as the light from the attic window fell across her face, peaceful, fragile, and impossibly brave. By evening, he drove her back to the hospital. She didn't want to go, but he knew she had to. The nurses were in tears when they saw her. Apparently, she had been missing all night, and they had searched the entire town. Before they took her away, she looked back at Ethan and whispered, "Thank you for carrying me up the stairs. You fixed something today." Days turned into weeks. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. He started fixing his old blue pickup again, just as he promised. Each turn of the wrench felt different now, purposeful. He even cleaned the attic, placing Lila's angel pendant beside his family's photo. Somehow, it didn't feel like a shrine to loss anymore. It felt like a bridge between broken souls, his and hers. One morning, he went to the hospital to visit her, carrying a small toy car he had restored, painted pink, with tiny angel wings drawn on it. But when he arrived, the nurse's face said everything. Lila had passed away the night before. Peacefully, in her sleep. Ethan stood there in silence, the toy car shaking in his hand. The nurse handed him a small note they found under Lila's pillow. It read, "Don't be sad, Mr. Ethan. You carried me when I was tired. Now I'll carry you in your heart. Keep fixing things, okay? Because that's your magic." He didn't cry at first. He just sat in his truck, clutching the note. And then, as the rain began to fall again, he wept, not from despair this time, but from something deeper. From healing. That night, Ethan finished repairing his pickup and drove out to the countryside, just as Lila had asked. The road stretched endlessly before him, and the sky melted into shades of silver and blue. He placed the angel pendant on the dashboard, and as the wind brushed through the open window, he whispered, "Thank you, kiddo. You fixed me." The stars blinked faintly above, as if she was listening.